Luz Irigary's Speculum of the Other Woman is a groundbreaking feminist philosophical text that critiques the Western intellectual tradition from a psychoanalytic and deconstructive perspective. Irigare engages with figures such as Plato, Aristotle, Freud, and Lacan while challenging deeply ingrained norms in philosophy, psychoanalysis, and culture. She uses a unique methodology that intertwines rigorous analysis with poetic and metaphorical language, creating a text that is as much a literary work as it is a philosophical treatise. Irigare examines how Western thought has historically constructed woman as the other to man, a passive and reflective entity defined primarily by her relation to the masculine subject. This framework systematically excludes and silences women's perspectives and experiences. She develops her argument through an intricate engagement with philosophical and psychoanalytic texts, explaining how these traditions perpetuate a vision of woman as a mirror or speculum that reflects the male subject's identity and desires but lacks an independent existence or voice. The book opens with a re-examination of philosophy, focusing on Plato's allegory of the cave from the Republic. The allegory, often interpreted as a metaphor for the soul's journey toward truth and enlightenment, reveals an implicit bias against the feminine. She critiques the imagery of the cave as a dark, enclosed, and maternal space that must be transcended by the male philosopher in pursuit of the light of reason and knowledge. In doing so, she identifies a recurring pattern in Western metaphysics: the association of the feminine with the corporeal, the irrational, and the chaotic, which must be subordinated to the masculine principles and order. This dualistic framework underpins the exclusion of women from the philosophical canon and perpetuates a patriarchal vision of knowledge and subjectivity. Irigare challenges Sigmund Freud's theories of sexuality and gender, particularly his concept of penis envy and the Oedipal complex. She argues that Freud's framework reflects and reinforces patriarchal assumptions rather than offering an objective account of human development. Freud's model positions women as incomplete or deficient men whose lack of a phallus marks them as subordinate. This perspective not only pathologizes female sexuality but also denies the possibility of a genuinely feminine subjectivity. She counters Freud's ideas with a call for a rethinking of female sexuality on its own terms, one that does not rely on masculine norms or frameworks. The book also engages a psychoanalytic theory, particularly his concept of the mirror stage and the symbolic order. Irigare critiques Lacan's assertion that subjectivity is constituted through entry into the symbolic order, which is governed by the law of the father and phallic signifier. Lacan's model, like Freud's, marginalizes the feminine by situating it outside or at the margins of the symbolic order. In this framework, woman is reduced to an absence or lack, defined only in relation to the phallus and the male subject. Irigare challenges this view by proposing an alternative understanding of the symbolic that would allow for the expression of feminine subjectivity and desire. She employs the metaphor of the mirror or speculum to explain how women have been constructed as a passive reflection of men's desires and identities. She critiques this dynamic not only as a philosophical and psychoanalytic issue, but also as a cultural and social one. Women, she argues, are relegated to a position of invisibility and silence, their identities erased or subsumed under the dominant masculine paradigm. This erasure has profound implications for women's ability to articulate their own desires, experiences, and perspectives, both within and outside the intellectual tradition. She also offers a poetic and imaginative vision of what a truly feminine discourse might look like. She advocates for a new language and symbolic system that would allow women to speak and think from their own position rather than through frameworks imposed by patriarchal culture. This involves not only rejecting existing structures but also creating new forms of expression that celebrate the fluidity, multiplicity, and corporeality of feminine. Irigary's writing itself exemplifies this approach, blending rigorous critique with lyrical and metaphorical language that seeks to embody the very principles she advocates. Another significant aspect of the book is its engagement with the question of sexual difference. Irigere argues that the concept of sexual difference has been suppressed or distorted in Western thought, which she tends to universalize the male subject and treat the feminine as a mere deviation or absence. She contends that acknowledging and affirming sexual difference is essential for creating a more just and inclusive intellectual and social order. However, this affirmation must go beyond superficial acknowledgements of diversity to encompass a profound rethinking of subjectivity, language, and culture. She refuses to conform to traditional academic norms, deliberately subverting the conventions of philosophical and psychoanalytic discourse. Her use of metaphor, irony, and poetic language disrupts the linearity and rigidity of historical thought, creating a text that resists easy interpretation or assimilation. This approach is both a strength and a challenge as it demands that readers engage with the text on multiple levels and grapple with its complexity.